And before we get started, so there's one person who hasn't been on the panel or on the stage yet. Maybe you stand up for a minute, Meeri. We know years and years back in time, I've been reading from LinkedIn and from the social media that you have been traveling quite regularly to US. So 2 questions to you. Who are you and why are you visiting US in the theme of AI and ethics?
Thanks. My name is Meeri Haataja. Who am I? I'm an entrepreneur for 1 year now. And that was the reason for traveling in the US. Yeah, there are not too many companies building technology for AI ethics related themes and AI responsibility. We are focusing on the transparency and accountability, and building technology platform for that one. And we were in acceleration program in New York for a few last months. Who am I? I don't know what else to say. Yeah, in this national discussion, I've been heavily through the leading the AI ethics working group in the national AI program. So maybe that's one thing.
Thank you, Meeri. So let's start so that we all will be sitting here, and the first round of possible questions come from yourself. So who wants to ask something from one of yourselves on the stage here?
Yeah, go ahead. As we have a professional politician here, you already mentioned that in your speech. I have wondered, how is it possible to regulate something in which nobody actually agrees what it is about? Is it possible?
I hope not, because then we cannot regulate it. So I fully agree, as long as we don't know what it is. And go back to the hammer. There is no law on hammers. So if I hammer a nail into the wall, good job. If I hammer somebody's head, bad job. But this is why we have laws not to do that, and against violence or whatever. So we need to regulate by use case. So, and there might be still the laws which maybe need a bit of an update because they don't fit into the digital world. It might not really be AI specific. That's the next dangerous thing, to mix up digitalization with AI. So often it goes into both directions. But there were intentions to come up with basically a law or whatever, a package of laws for AI. And I'm extremely fighting that because I don't think that's realistic. It's super different if you talk about a chatbot or a robot. So one can harm people, whatever, with movement, and one does not even move. So how will I regulate that? So I hope we don't, but there were at least plans, unfortunately.
So this is a different case than GDPR, for example, because that's a kind of well-defined substance, more or less.
I would not say that it is well-defined in every corner, but at least the idea of it, yes, that makes sense, because it tries to protect the privacy of people in a digital world, and we all agreed that privacy has to be protected as well in the old world. So basically we're just taking it over to the new world, and that was the first draft. Should we somehow have a little bit of an update here and there? Yes, we probably should. But in general, I think it's absolutely okay to have a right to be forgotten, or basically to force companies to say, look, I mean, there has to be an API to delete that stuff and whatever. So those are the beneficial ones. Was it maybe a bit too tight when it basically comes to social clubs and websites and stuff? Probably it was. So.
Yeah, does it work? Yeah, I had a question for you as well, actually. Regulation is an interesting thing. So always when we say that we're not able to regulate something that we don't know, I think it's good to bring on table what is happening in the world at the moment on the regulation. So if we look at the US and facial recognition area, there's a lot of regulation happening. So already I think 3 or 4 cities have banned the use of facial recognition in US. San Francisco, Portland is considering not only for the public sector but also for private sector. So what is your view on this kind of regulation, that we start to ban the home technology in certain areas, or should we be actually more active in some smarter regulation than this one?
I mean, you talk to liberals, so basically regulation is not my sport. We have other parties to go ahead there. Facial recognition, super difficult topic. That's probably the best example of use case driven regulation. Banning Face ID on my iPhone, why would I? So if I go to whatever fair, I had that in Buenos Aires, so the people were pre-signed, they were walking in and basically was just printing out their passport. Super fast, I've never seen it that fast. If you sign up for that, okay, I'm fine. Berlin is trying it at basically South Cross train station, so this is where you have to look closely. So I would not ban a technology. I mean, if it's not harmful, I mean, it's a technology just to harm, then yes, nobody would agree to have it. But banning the technology without knowing what would be the side effects is kind of dangerous. So this is what, for example, with GDPR, if you take text and data mining stuff. So that's super important as a startup that you can do it, but somehow now they are in a gray area. So this is if you use the hammer and don't know what's happening. And so therefore, like you said, it has to be agile. Maybe in some extent, there has to be one time a bit of a discussion to start somehow. And then I think you could, for example, Face ID, maybe you could ban it when it's used uselessly on public spots. So I don't get the benefit of controlling all for finding one.
Maija-Riitta, please.
I very much liked your point about success. What actually is success? Because how should we know what kind of regulation is optimal if we do not know where we want to head? And that's something that is lacking in the discussion, for example, in Finland, I feel. We are busily avoiding problems, but we forgot to ask where we want to go. What actually is the definition of success in the social meaning of it? Would you like to elaborate a bit?
Like if we would stick to that, like what is success? So if I do face recognition at a busy intersection and I save the faces or check the faces of 1 million people to maybe get one bad guy, a nation has to decide, is it worth it? And so since I'm a liberal now, I'm against it. I don't say it's okay to basically check on 1 million ordinary people to get that one. So, but if you're on the super secure side of it, you say, yeah, okay, we have to do that. I mean, so, and this is the discussion up to each state. And if I go to China, they check me, but I agreed to go there. And for Germany, I would still fight because we have seen it in Turkey, and you also pointed out how fast systems can change. So from a liberal thinking, I would never pass a law or give away a weapon which I would never be able to give to my worst enemy. So if I pass a law, I think, okay, if this thing goes to my worst enemy, would I still agree? And if it's a no, then it's a no. But that's my personal compass, and other people feel different there.
Okay, let me pick a question from the tab, and then we take a few questions from the audience as well. This question goes to all of you in one by one. Maija-Riitta, you mentioned this Cambridge Analytica case, and it's been heavily on the media, and we know, or we believe knowing, the consequences in a couple of cases. What is the next crash? What is the next big thing that hits the humankind in the area of AI and data and ethics? So what is your guess, or what is your knowledge? So each of you, a guess, what is the next Cambridge Analytica type of case where we will be wondering that, oh no, now this happened? Who wants to start? Just guesses. Meeri.
Finland, I would maybe stick to this further utilization of this facial recognition technology. In Finland, we have passed a law that allows our customs and police use this technology. They are not using in my understanding, too much yet, but that might be a local discussion when they actually start to use that.
Mario?
I think it's the social scoring the Chinese do. So at the moment it will kick off, and for them it's okay. So we have to be. It's dangerous what I'm basically saying right now, because as a liberal, I don't want to have it. But if you talk to people from China, they say, look, so it's a very affluent and special few you have as Europeans, because before I went to court, I had a certain name, and basically they said go to jail. Now at least I have log files where I can prove that it's not like this. So they're coming from a total different direction. So they say that's an update, basically, in our civil rights. Whereas we are coming from basically bold democracies over years, you can say, how could you ever do that? So it's really two worlds collapsing or colliding. And I think when they turn it on and it kicks in, right now we are looking at it. But for example, what happens if you get a social supplier score? So what happens if they rate the suppliers that they have to be socially correct in their system to sell stuff to China? So do we say, no, okay, we stop, it's just 1 billion people, 1 million market. I stop because I don't like the system of getting a social supplier score. So I think this is the next big thing we will all discuss, how to deal with it.
Social scoring, thank you. Johan.
I don't have one.
Thank you. I had an unfair advantage of thinking about this. First thing is that, well, I don't know, but I'm sure it's going on at this very moment, this thing that will cause the scandal. And one thing to think about here is that how did we came to know about the Cambridge Analytica? It's fascinating that there are big companies, states, organizations that might be doing fishy things, and there are maybe thousands of employees. And still yet nobody kind of tells about that. Surely many people know about the thing that is going on now. So how to enable this kind of a mechanism of taking these concerns despite of NDAs and that kind of stuff up? So that's basically one of them. And it goes back to the fact that those people who are doing the things right now, they are most informed about this and they're complicated matters. So how could we intervene that process? That's the thing. Okay, then what's the scandal? A cool thing. Maybe because the artificial intelligence or these technologies in general, they create new attack surface or threat vectors, which means that you could, for example, lure an autonomous vehicle by having patches of something. You can engineer an attack towards AI system, and it will be a kind of a novel one. So that's fascinating in a way. I do know that for example, F-Secure in Finland researches that, and universities researches that.
I have absolutely no idea. But when something comes up in public life, it's not usually something big. It's a small detail that people can personally relate to. And so I suspect that the subject would be related to health or work life. Health-wise, there is a new method that makes it possible to predict exactly who will be the one who will spend public money in the future, and somebody finds out about this. Or in work life, there is a surveillance method that makes it possible to see who is spending work time in the wrong way. So it's not actually something big. It's something personal.
My guess of the big news is this deep fake. So I just read an article where it stated that in half a year's time, by end of this year, the quality of those AI created video captures of a human anybody are so good that our human eyes and ears do not anymore realize that it's not the president who is talking there. Still today, if you know this might be a fake video and you look it carefully, yes, you spot it. This is not true. But if in half years of time, I don't pick it, what happens then? Let's take a few questions from the audience. And in Twitter, still the hashtag is there. And there are some nice comments and maybe 2 or 3 questions. I can take those later, but let's take a few questions from the audience. I'll pass the microphone. Please state who you are and then pass your question, please.
My name is Philip Aminov. I'm president of the German Finnish Chamber of Commerce. I have a question on responsibility. And it basically goes as follows. In Finland, at least, we are very, very happy for the law or for a system or for a process to take decisions on our behalf, and especially to hide behind these when explaining what the outcome was of a decision-making situation. At the same time, media are full of concerns that, oh dear, artificial intelligence will take away personal responsibility from systems, from people, and so on. And what will become of that, and where will the responsibility lie? You all work in different fields related to AI one way or another. What do you individually think are the key questions to think about for us about the effect of increasing use of AI and personal responsibility for what happens in a society?
One of those small questions. Who wants to start?
Yep, then I'll start. It's really one of those super easy questions, and there is not that one answer, but it will be education. So it's a big answer as well. So to survive in that world, we need to empower at least the next generations to somehow decide if they buy it or not, or if they use it or not. And somehow, at least now talking from a German perspective, I always give that example. For some reasons, we were addicted by cars. Everybody wants to understand cars. So it doesn't matter if boy or girl, they could open up the hood and they say, oh, look, it's the motor and this and that. So somehow we lost that when it came to digital topics. So we just turned off, some of us. We said, look, oh no, it uses a battery, I'll stay with my machines and stuff. So, and I think this was dangerous, we did it once, and we should not do it with AI. We should not have, or we should not allow to have a digital divide. So, because this thing goes into our lives, because it's in our smartphones, it will be in our fridge, it's in our watches, it's everywhere. So we basically cannot allow people to not think about it. And I think this is the biggest thing to manage.
Maybe a very quick comment on that, but I've been thinking a lot of this, like how to keep citizens involved in the discussion, engaged in this society where decisions from public sector also are heavily done, or like more and more done by the algorithms, how to be able to use the fundamental rights of actually, like, you know, monitoring how the public power is being used if you don't understand or have information on this. So I have like concluded for myself that we need to strive and drive two things. Education and literacy is like obviously something super important to make sure that everyone has the skills to process that information that we hopefully more will be getting. And the second is we need to establish mechanisms for getting enough information on how these systems work so that we can actually impact and evaluate, monitor how the power is used in our society. Like then quickly, when thinking about that, you come into conclusion that we need also standards. We need common ways of working for example, informing and providing information on these systems. So this is something that at least I want to stand for and drive to enable citizen agency in the algorithmic age.
I'm a great believer in citizen influence, of course, as I just told. But the exact form of influence, I think, depends on who you are, what kind of role you have in society. Because no innovation becomes efficient without the market. And every one of us is a consumer. So our individual choices have a bearing. Then again, if you are an investor, it's important to think what kind of innovations we're going to finance in the future. One very important field. Then again, if you are a developer of AI, you might think about professional ethics and talk about it with your colleagues, because we laymen do not have that kind of access to the nature of AI. And it's vitally important that the professionals discuss the guidelines. And of course, the legislators have a great responsibility also as individuals to help colleagues become aware of the complex nature of the issue. So I think that we all have a very huge responsibility, but the practical nature of it varies depending on who we are and what kind of role we have in society.
Johan still?
This is a hard question. I just started to think that the kind of very close level, whether I have malicious intentions or not, that's kind of an easy one. I'm responsible for those. But then we have a mechanism of mitigating financial responsibility in a way that the unlimited companies, they are legal persons, actually. You can sue them and they have to reimburse something. So we kind of have this idea of mitigating responsibility in a financial way. Don't know if that has anything to do with moral. I'm not a philosopher, but anyway, there is such a mechanisms. But then what about the transformational effects? Because they are really hard to predict. For example, well, we have now internet, great means of intervening democratic elections in an unfair way, or spreading rumors, or using it as a platform for spreading fake news done by AI. What is the responsibility of the researchers at 1950s, 60s who thought that, okay, that maybe ARPANET is a good thing, TCP/IP protocol for transferring packet data, what are the transformational effects of that? Or what did Berners-Lee think that I have this fancy, we have this document collection, we have to have hypertext and hyperlinks, let's make a World Wide Web. So kind of these are really complicated matters. We cannot predict them. So there's some sort of a limit. We have to make our best effort, but some things we simply cannot know.
Not easy questions and not easy answers. There's a gentleman in the back row, but I'll take one from the web here. There's a long text from Petri Rajaniemi, but if I squeeze to the final question here, it says about so that whose responsibility it is to keep track of the fears aimed at the general public? Whose job is to actively ease those fears? Mario, please.
It's us. So it's all of us, but in general, first of all, I guess it's politics, because somehow we are attached into every process. If it's education, if it's passing laws, if it's whatever, police, justice, so they are everywhere, and so this means they have the biggest chunk of responsibility. And in general, it's for sure it's us as society to help each other. And just because we had the fake news stuff coming up a bit, and also the responsibility stuff, I think one solution is that politics or politicians will have to become more transparent. And this is basically what somehow industry and politics hate. But with deepfakes, it might not work to fake something which was put it out, maybe with a waterproof sign on a blockchain, and everybody knows, oh no, it has not even that waterproof sign, it's just another fake. So this is maybe how my daughters will deal with it in 10 years. So they will look at it, get out the app and say, oh, come on, how it's a cheap fake, that's just done with this and that. So might be the future. I don't know, as you said, I can only imagine to a way, but I would never be scared, and I would never think it becomes more negative than it is right now. And I think this is to what politicians should leave up, to try to motivate the people to not be scared. And then basically we get a positive rotation, instead we get a destructive rotation.
Do we have any Finnish politicians in the room today? Well, let's tell our friends who are in Arkadianmäki these messages. Thank you, Mari. Any of you want to comment still, please?
You have it, something, okay. One thing is that what was the form? It was to ease the...
Ease the fears. Whose job is to ease the fears of the public?
Well, one thing is that maybe, because I do know that there is ongoing research, for example, for the privacy problems, which is called differential privacy, which makes it possible maybe to actually make algorithms or machine learning or statistics on data so that even the data provider doesn't know that much about the individual details, so it kind of masks it. Or these kind of things that are actually happening in academia that are taking in advantage care of some things that probably could be somehow more and more made publicly or easily understandable, that this is not a force of nature that just happens. That's maybe one thing.
There is an interesting research result in behavioral economics, which states that people have a tendency to be afraid of the wrong things. So I don't think that the task is to ease fear as such. It's a protective mechanism. But the displaced fear is the problem. And there is plenty of that kind of fear that is not related to the facts. Because if we are afraid of the right things, it means that we can take corrective measures. But this free-floating terror around AI is a problem.
I kind of personally think that the myths that are related to AI, that it's formed as some sort of an omnipotent being that is right here now, is one of the reasons. We kind of are afraid of the wrong thing, a kind of a science fiction image. And the things that are going on are boring, but they are actually the real troubles. For example, this complexity and ubiquitousness of certain technologies and so forth.
Right, there's a gentleman on the back row. Please name and the question.
Michael Werner. I live in Hankasalmi, that's Middle Finland. I'm German. And my question is, or it's perhaps the answer of your question, the leader of Google, Mr. Ray Kurzweil, expect the way of no return 2045. It means we have only 25 years time, if he is right, to change something, to change it in the way of the human being, to change generally, do we like that or not? Therefore, I think we have not, or we don't need a discussion over ethics and philosophics. We need a discussion of our health and illness, because if people are using these digital networks, they can be ill. And if they are, that the World Health Organization agree with it. That is not only for one people or for one country. The World Health Organization said you can be ill if you use for a long time, about some 5 hours, the computer and all the networks. It means if it is so like it can be, we can go to the judgment. It means we can fight for our rights, and it means it can be like 20 years before in a smoking discussion, and Google and Facebook and Apple are afraid of it because they have to pay. If the judgment, like in America, thousands of people do that, then it will be very expensive for that worldwide working firms. That is one way. And the next way, we have to talk about over unemployment. The IGN Bank researching said we have perhaps in the next 40 years, we lost 59% of our working places. What we do with the people which are unemployment? Normally the government play, but do the government want that? We have to, of course, the firms have to play and pay, and leaders, Siemens, and said that we have it like in Finland, that we have to have, like in Finland, money without income. The government pay for the people. The Finnish stopped it in this year. It was 4 years working. We said in Germany, Grundeinkommen. And if 60% about without work, cars cannot buy cars. If you have given the people not money, the firm cannot earn some money.
Thank you, Michael. Comments of these thoughts or viewpoints?
I mean, none of them were wrong, sure, and all these topics are there. This is why Finland basically went ahead and tried the universal income. And there is the idea of robo-taxes. So there's the idea of basically taxing. In the blockchain world, they are called DAOs, data anonymous objects, so that they basically give back parts of their benefits. So there are statistics that we will get more jobs, there are statistics that we will lose jobs, that's okay, we just don't know how it ends out. But I'm absolutely convinced that we won't run into a problem because there are already ideas of paths we will go. But in the moment, if I look basically to Germany, so we are scared that basically AI will steal jobs. I mean, half of our nation will retire within 20 years, so I hope it steals a lot of jobs because there is nobody to do their jobs anymore. So, you know, we are hectic on both ends. We say we need new people to do the jobs, and we say we lose jobs, so nobody is really thinking end to end. So that's the point where I would agree. So again, we are at goals, like what is success? So I'm with you to think about it end to end, and I would not the last part with like that social networks are diseases. I mean, if you eat, I don't know, 10 kilo of champignons, you are dead as well. So, but they are not a problem. Everything you do like too much can be a problem. So, and nobody forces you to go on Facebook. So I would say it's just a bit noise. And in general, I think we need to learn to live with it because it will not go away and it has benefits as well.
Yeah, one thing, I think that in Finland there has been a debate on the working hours, for example. So that brings into mind that the work week hasn't been always 40 hours. So it's not a holy number in a way. If we can do with less work, because more efficiency, it could. So what's the proper level? Of course, if people do not work that much, how to kind of share the welfare then? How would the state get taxes and so forth? So that's one problem, but in a way that this amount of work having been fixed into 40 hours, I think that it is going to change into some direction.
We have passed 11 o'clock. I would like to thank our panelists. Thanks for the morning part.